Marvel Studios has launched a new section of the MCU, Marvel Spotlight. The banner will house projects in the MCU that aren't necessarily connected to the main canon. Even though who even knows what that is anymore. Marvel promises grounded, character-driven stories that new fans can grab a hold of. But this line of self-contained stories might have more influence over the MCU than you think. After skipping pretty much all of the latest MCU releases, I decided to check out Echo. Because, well, I've been clamoring for the franchise to try a few more unique and mature stories outside of the convoluted canon that the MCU has become. Something like what Warner Brothers had done with Joker in 2019. And I feel like I can't just ask for that and then not watch it, you know? It's no secret Marvel has been on a downward spiral since Endgame. Too many storylines, too many characters across Disney Plus shows and the movies, too much green screen, too much of this.
Oh my god! I can't. Can you? I got it.
And the movies, for the most part, have been extremely disappointing. So much so that a huge fan of the franchise like myself hasn't even bothered with anything MCU in quite some time. But along comes Echo, and Marvel's adept need to remind you that this is rated TV mature with every single piece of marketing. But it definitely caught my interest to check out the first installment under Marvel's new Spotlight banner, which Marvel will tell you is some great new feature of theirs, but we all know it's a response to the abundance of criticism of the MCU and its steep falloff. All that said, I went into Echo with an open mind, and after the first 2 episodes, my biggest complaint was that the characters and dialogue didn't match the tone and aesthetic of the show at all. What was illustrated as a dark and mature show was actually filled with immature caricatures, cheesy dialogue, and was essentially just typical Marvel fare hidden beneath a show with a bit more blood. It had the superhero cameo that will trend online, forced humor, and average action. It certainly wasn't the drastic contrast from the MCU that I was hoping for with their first TVMA Spotlight project. I always remember director James Mangold talking about the R rating that Fox gave him for Logan, and he said, "That's why we wanted an R rating. It wasn't because of the violence, and it wasn't because of the language, but because I didn't have to write a movie for 11-year-olds. If we had an R-rated movie, there were going to be no Happy Meals, there can be no action figures, there was going to be no marketing on Saturday morning cartoons or anything like it. So that suddenly you're not making a movie written for someone under 15, and that changes the length of scenes. It changes what they're talking about." Essentially what he's saying is that the mature rating allowed for extended scenes of dialogue, an ability to expand on the dramatic elements, and allow for a deeper dive into the characters. There was no pressure to get to the next joke or action sequence. Whereas with Echo, I felt Marvel still made a Marvel show, but just kind of shot it at night and added a bit more blood. All that said, then episode 3 hits, and I found it to be great. The typical comic book cliches took a back seat to a slower-paced episode, with some hefty dialogue surrounding family drama and heritage. The action had shock factor and was intense, and for the first time in the series, it felt earned. Unfortunately, the show doesn't stick the landing from there, especially not with the lackluster finale at all. It goes through the motions, and the climactic battle features one of the most annoying devices in storytelling. When the protagonist just has to think about their past or their heritage, and then all of a sudden their hands can glow and proceed to get a convenient boost in power to get out of any situation. But the show is filled with these kinds of devices and cliches throughout, like how Biscuits is introduced as an incapable character, spilling the news of Maya being back in town and so forth, but then is also a NASCAR-level stunt driver who can race a train through a forest when you need him to, or can take out a dozen of Kingpin's men when he's not providing forced, cringeworthy comedic relief. And usually it's easy to look past these things, especially within a universe of superheroes. But when the aesthetic and tone of the show appear so gritty and grounded, it just makes these unrealistic leaps of faith that the creators are requesting of us as an audience just that much harder to take. Some positives about the show. Alaqua Cox, this girl, tremendous in the lead role. Captivating throughout, and the show does not work at all without her performance. I also really enjoyed that her character Maya was a morally gray character at times, when we're so accustomed to things being black and white in the MCU. Captain America, good. Guy with red face, bad. It was nice to see some nuance as Maya struggles with her past and finding her true purpose. Some of the action was good. Like I said, episode 3 all the way through I thought was great. When the humor wasn't forced, it actually works quite well here. But at times I found the content matter did not fit the aesthetic of the show. Every flashback to the wooden Robax commercials, or the overtly long lacrosse flashback had me yawning. Between the over-reliance on convenient plot devices and the story being far too simple for what Marvel wanted to be a mature show, it is a bit of a disappointment to say the least. Perhaps I had unrealistic expectations, but for the studio's first attempt at their new Spotlight division, I wish they had come out with a bang. So it got me thinking, what could this mean for the future? Well, in the midst of all the chaos at Marvel Studios, introducing the Spotlight banner to their film division is part of a leftover plan to expand the MCU to the point where there would never be a lapse in Marvel content. Once Marvel had redefined the entertainment industry and its image, executives decided to take it one step further and expand it into streaming content. This would ensure that when there wasn't a movie to watch, there would always be a miniseries or a short film available to the fans. Of course, this eventually led to Marvel fatigue from both the fans and the employees. With a demand for more content came longer hours and a more chaotic working schedule, quality suffered and fans started taking notice. They didn't want more shows if Marvel couldn't make them all as good as before. The visual effects team decided to unionize as a result of poor working conditions, and certain executives were fired, and here we have the chaotic state Marvel Studios is in today. But this goal of creating a never-ending stream of MCU content is still in play. Marvel Spotlight is part of that initiative. In their effort to create more TV series and streaming content, Marvel Spotlight is the banner under which many of these projects will fall. I don't know, think of them kind of like Marvel's daytime television. They aren't the drastic, consequential shows that will change the universe forever. They're stories that will focus on individual characters in a contained, closed-loop way. However, if used properly, I really hope that the Spotlight banner is successful for Marvel. Personally myself, which is what personally means, I don't know why I had to say myself, I always prefer grittier, character-driven stories that take risks within the comic book genre, and Marvel's Spotlight banner allows for this, as the writers aren't creatively handcuffed by having to fit a larger narrative. I hope this ushers in a new wave for the MCU, because I really believe it could lead to some special films and series. Echo just wasn't quite that. Guys, I've heard no buzz or reviews or anything about this show, so I'm super curious, what did you all think of it? Did you watch it? Do you think Marvel Spotlight will turn out to be a good thing? Whatever your thoughts, let me know down below. Peace.
Yeah, yeah.